Support provided by Walters, Papillon, Thomas Collins, LLC, specializing in business litigation and personal injury cases for over 40 years.
I came from West Virginia, and by chance I ended up in Baton Rouge. I was, upon graduation there at Marshall, my plans were to move to New York. And so I went to this audition for summer repertory work, and LSU was starting this new graduate program in acting. And they had, not knowing the rules and such, had crashed the party at this, it was supposed to be only regional theaters there. And so they pretty much snuck in and were there auditioning people, and it just so turns out I was one of the first actors to audition that day. I had a really low number, and I got seen by them before they were literally kicked out. They were asked to leave. And so anyway, I did not want to go to grad school. I was eager to get right into it, but you know, they were starting this program, so they were offering these full rides and full assistantships to teach. So I thought, you know, I'll go down there and I'll go for a semester and you know, get some acting classes and then move on to New York. But I just loved it so much down here. Obviously, here I am 30 years later, 30 plus years later. I'm not good at math. So I stayed, got my master's degree here, and moved on to Los Angeles, as Beverly was saying. 18 years back and forth between Los Angeles and New York, mostly Los Angeles, probably lived in New York about 3 years. And so what brought me back here, I guess the question would be, you know, why would we leave that and move to here? Well, this was in around 2007. Our son was 2 years old, and it was about time to start school, and you know, we just really wanted to raise a child somewhere, you know, where that it seemed like there was a budding film business down here. But I grew up in a really small town. My wife, smaller than me even, but my town was about 27,000 people. But Baton Rouge, you know, was close enough to New Orleans. We had this film business starting out, and we were like, well, you know, let's see if we can, if I can continue to manage a career from there, because at the time you were starting to audition online a lot, and I was having to travel quite a bit anyway. So, you know, we moved here, and right at that time, it was just a trial. The movie business just exploded down here. As a matter of fact, in 2000, this was 2007 when I came, but then by 2012, 2013 and 14, I don't know, some of you may know, but it's kind of a shocking statistic that we were the film production capital of the world in those years. We had more $100 million plus budget movies happening here than Hollywood, London, anywhere. Really remarkable. But so there was just really no. I worked here. I was actually, you know, employed here more than anywhere else. So you know, we stayed and we're here now. The film business has kind of gone packing, and over the past couple of years, to give you an idea, you know, we stuck it out, and you know, I think it's coming back here. I've been very busy recently, but from the time I moved here till the time they capped the tax credits, I won't make it political, but I was the most employed actor in the state of Louisiana for every one of those years. To give you an idea, as soon as they capped the tax credits in 2015, shortly after 2015, that I did not work in the state of Louisiana from 2015 until just here. I just did 3 projects in a row, and they removed that cap. And now I'm getting ready to start my 4th one in New Orleans. But anyway, I think it's going to come back strong. But you know, the great part was that you know, we then had another child born here, and you know, they're happily in school. My wife has a great job here, and you know, we weren't going to go anywhere. And I'm just really thankful. You know, it's coming back strong. Yeah, here I am. You know, I thought I would more, you know, let you know how I ended up here, and yeah, you know, where I came from and such. And then, if you have any questions about anything regarding the career, or you know, it can also, I won't be offended if your question is, can we please move on to our dessert course?
Joe, what's a typical day or a typical week in your life being an actor here, working all over the country?
You know, I always say that my job is auditioning. I audition way more than, you know, I'm actually working on a set. And you know, I was just speaking at the LSU. They had their little film festival, 4th year in a row. They've started this film program at LSU, and it's going pretty nicely. But you know, I was speaking to them there, and I try to impress on them that I've grown to relish the audition. You know, it's so many, and I think that's why, you know, I have a lot of success. Because I don't look at it as a pressure situation where, you know, in the beginning it was all about, you know, oh my God, you know, I'm going to a hotel to meet Martin Scorsese. You know, I want to just talk about how much I love your films, and you know, I just really want to work with you. I'd get all worked up and about this end result, and really, you know, the focus became then, you know, it's like, you're doing that more than anything else, going out there and putting yourself out. And so I looked at it as a chance to have these little mini one-man shows for all these famous people. And you know, people are like paying to get showcases, to get in front of people who can give them jobs. And it's like, here I'm going over to a hotel, you know, to sit in front of Steven Spielberg and do my performance. And everything really changed after that. So, you know, it's like, as hard as it is when you're starting out, you know, because you really want that job, you know, you really want to put away that, you know, that side job that you're doing and working hard to, you know, try to get where you want to get. But if you can think about that, and so I do that pretty often. I have a little taping studio that at the house, and really, no matter where you are, you know, even like with voiceover work, the people that do national voiceovers, and a girl I worked with who's like the lady of OnStar, you know, when she says, you know, she has to record all these sounds for any conceivable. But they do that at their home, you know, in their little studios now. She lives in Portland, and you know, it's like she'll get a gig and she just goes into a little closet that she has put foam in, and mine, I actually turned a master closet into my taping studio. But that's my everyday job, and being dad, that is another great thing. I play just seemingly dad after dad after dad. which is great because you get paid for doing that thing that normally costs you so much money, and then you get all that practice. It's like the lines write themselves. Literally, I'd say the things that I would really like to say to my own kids, and they're like, "Yeah, say that line," yeah, that's
What are
a
your
thing I
top
like.
5 favorite roles? Our most famous roles.
Yeah. Well.
Would you repeat the question?
Oh yeah. What are your top 5 favorite roles? Actually, one of them was here at Swine Palace, the Rocky Horror Show. Christine and I did together, and the main reason for that is we would come off stage thinking, I think this is probably how the Beatles felt. They had people screaming and like reaching up at the stage, and normally, the theater audience, we have to be reserved and keep it to ourselves, and but that environment encouraged, audience feedback and all that, and it made me really want to go back to the old Elizabethan days when people threw cabbages and stuff at you if they didn't like it. It's live theater. But on film, it would probably be. Stranger Things is just a really great time because of the the kids. They're watching them all. They've all really become famous, and just watching them kind of stay the same all through that. But it's just a really, excuse me, a really happy set to be on. And then, of course, my King of the Hill, which was the thing that got it all started. Steven Soderbergh movie, another Baton Rougean. That hired me in that, and that was like a chance thing that happened. It was one of those things that I had come down to help. Barry Kyle found Swine Palace in 1992, and Stephen had seen me on stage, but I was in the back of his mind, and he just happened to be talking to somebody on the phone during a break of one of our rehearsals, and he asked, who's in the show, and they said Joe Chrest, and he this actor David Jensen, he came over to me and said, hey, you want to do a movie this summer? And I was like, yeah, I figured it was like a student film or something, and he said, Steven's doing this new film, and he said he has a part for you, and the next thing I knew, there was a casting director, very famous casting director, Deborah Aquila, called me and said, we need you in St. Louis, and that was 92, and chance happening, and got the whole thing rolling.
You've been in 6 of his films, Soderbergh?
6, maybe 7. And then one play, the disastrous Geniuses at Swine Palace. He directed a play. It wasn't completely disastrous, but he decided he wanted to. It's set, during a typhoon, and he decided he wanted to light the entire production with only candlelight. And it was a comedy, so no one could really see, and yeah, there we are.
Could you comment on how Netflix and Amazon Prime have changed from an actor's perspective, sort of your business vis-a-vis traditional studios?
Yeah, you can definitely see why all the work is gravitating to these places. One is the creative control, that you don't have the networks, telling you, well, and censors, this has to be this way. And there's so many people with their hands in the pie at the network level. Like when for instance, when I tested for a pilot for Fox, Disney was involved, and by the time I got to the final callback, there were literally like 35 people in the room. They have to have it in a little miniature theater. And you have all these, not that many people, but such a number of people tampering, with the product. And then, of course, they, on a darker note, as a Screen Actors Guild, we made a really terrible deal with the streaming services. Things like back, remember when your internet, it took forever just to get email, but doing, and like who would have ever thought you could watch a movie? I mean, it'd take you forever just to pull up a photograph, but like who would have thought you could watch, a movie on your computer, much less like your cell phone? So basically, we gave up almost in all the royalties for performers for this medium. They're changing it very incrementally, but so as a producer, you get to keep pretty much all your money in those services. So it's a nice deal for them, not so much for us. Yes.
Would you tell us more just about the business and the kinds of people you have to hire in order to be successful? Do you have a publicist or do you have an agent?
Mm-hmm.
And how many of that, how much of that do you have to have?
Yeah, I have an agent, and I've taken a manager. I had a manager much of my career, but after I moved here, I actually got rid of my, there was so much production here, I got rid of my Los Angeles representation, probably, about a year after we met here, after we moved here. But yeah, the more of those people you have, the more of your, your gross page after government and all that stuff, there's a lot of people to pay for a lot of people. I've never paid a publicist. I've had one associated with a couple of projects that I did, but it's always a toss-up, it's at what point to hire one. I've had many contact me, since Stranger Things that want to represent me, but anytime you see when you do, say, a talk show, David Letterman, Jimmy Kimmel, all that stuff, you get those bookings through a publicist. Anytime you see actors, you wonder, like, why is this person getting, a blurb in Variety for their casting? My role was, I'm one of the major supporting people, and this person, very small. Well, the publicists have those relationships, and that's what you're paying for. You're paying to get your picture here and there, and get on various carpets that you're not supposed. That you're.
I think I need a microphone over here, Joe, to your left.
Hey, Joe, we've got one right over here.
Yeah, and I keep breaking the cardinal sin of not repeating the question.
Stand up, I'm sorry. Joe, for fans of Stranger Things, thanks for playing such a fantastic clueless dad.
Oh, thank you.
And what fans want to know is in season 3, are you going to be cuckolded or killed?
Yes. Well, we just started episode 1 of season 3 last week, and it's a shame. We have to sign so many NDAs now that I'm not even. I'm afraid to tell my kids even. Because over at school it's a big deal. But yeah, it's not looking real good for. I'll just say that.
When somebody like Tom Hanks comes to town to make a movie, does he look you up and come over for dinner?
Not Tom Hanks, but he has hired me before. I was hoping to be a part of this. He's here shooting Greyhound, and I think they've started. Does anybody know if they've started? I know he's been here a long time, but yeah, I'm recurring in yet another streaming show, a show that is really frustrating, but Mr. Mercedes is one, but and it's on DirecTV, AT&T, and you can't just subscribe like you can to Netflix or Hulu. They want you to completely change your carrier. You know, you can't, as a Cox customer, you just can't watch this show. And I've tried. It's one of the best shows I've ever seen. Has anyone ever seen Mr. Mercedes? It's based on a Stephen King trilogy. But anyway, I'm involved in 3 of those, juggling back and forth, and in another project. So Greyhound wasn't really in the cards anyway. But I'm a huge served in the Air Force, and I'm a huge fan of all things military, and especially World War II and Vietnam. I love that part of history. So, and my not my grandfather, my uncle, who's still alive, served on that class of destroyer in World War II on the USS Dale. So I really wanted to be on that ship, but didn't work out.
When you have a local production, like
Oh,
go ahead, Joe.
yes.
I guess one of the things people may not know is when Soderbergh, the first film he ever did out of here with my brother,
Yes.
John Hardy,
Mhm.
was sexualizing videotape, and they were watching it on the site, the studio at LBB, and I was hoping it wasn't a porno film. This was pre any kind of tax credits or anything.
Yeah.
Then he went on to do King of the Hill,
Mhm.
and there are a whole group of people who were involved in that very first Underneath that we saw with
Mhm.
you, that are now, that live here, that are from Louisiana, that go around the world and do story, and come back here. Could you name some of them? I think David, you mentioned.
Yeah, David Jensen. Well, and then Paul Ledford's here in Baton Rouge. He's like known to be one of the top sound mixers in the entire industry. I mean, he's in demand. He could work on any set he wants to at any given time, and he's been able to do that all here from Baton Rouge. And then Larry Blake, who's down in New Orleans, has a Swell Tone post-sound production. It's one of the top post-sound production places, if not the top in our country. And so it makes it really nice when, like I do a movie down here, you know, invariably you have to do some looping. You did a scene in a crowded bar, and they didn't get the dialogue line or something, so you got to go in and repeat lines, dialogue replacement. And so I'm able to say, you know, I'll do it down at Swell Tone, and they just plug in, you know, on the phone, and we do it right there. So that's really good.
So I guess, didn't you do Lewis and Clark with us?
I did, yes,
Sorry, that
yes.
was probably one of not the best experiences. You mentioned that it was a successor to Evangeline.
Yeah. Actually, I just was on that panel I was talking about with a guy named Jared Coates, who's thinking about making Evangeline into a movie, which I think would be a great idea. Those guys, probably a lot of you have seen Jamie Wax and Paul Taranto's works. They're just so talented, and Paul is a colleague of my wife there at Episcopal. Sad to see him going, because my kids are just getting at the age to, you know, do orchestra and such.
My question piggybacks on Beth's. I know I have a neighbor who is a stuntman actor. When,
Is it Michael Papajohn?
yes.
Yeah, great friend.
When a big production comes to Baton Rouge, about what percent of the cast, crew, come from the Baton Rouge area?
The Baton Rouge area, you kind of group it all in with New Orleans. It just depends on the production. At the time, in that heyday, a huge percentage because so many of us had moved here. There, for instance, like now, part of the packet that Atlanta puts out, Georgia, is that there are now 2,000 employed actors in the Atlanta region. To give you an idea of what that means, in Screen Actors Guild, there, you know, and this is like actors, there's thousands, the lion's share of actors don't make it into the union, people in New York and Los Angeles. So then in our union, there's a 98% unemployment rate on every given day. To think that then with those kind of numbers of who's not working, that in Atlanta right now they have 2,000, and at the time there just wasn't a whole lot going on there film-wise. In fact, the reason they're having such a boom is because their governor Nathan Deal and a group of them got together and said, how can we be more like Louisiana? At the same time we were going, you know, how can we be, you know, less generous?
We just finished the Louisiana Film Festival here. Can you talk about why film festivals are important to the independent films and the impact of having it here in the city?
Yeah, you know, the independent films, to me, you know, I mean, that's really, it's like regional theater is to Broadway. You know, it's where, you know, for the real, it's a place for artists to really stretch and do things that you might not be able to do in the mainstream, that people are, you know, not going to want to put, you know, bank $100 million on. But there's people, you know, in the regional theater and with these independent projects, as far as film go, who, you know, are just not always, you know, they want to make their money back, obviously. You know, no one wants to lose money, but it's less of a money play and more of a passion piece, something that they really want to express artistically. So, you know, to me, you know, some of the best things I've seen that have stuck with me, you know, are little small projects. And my buddies and I from, you know, we're still in touch 30 years later, my guys from my MFA program there at LSU, and we all write, and we got together a couple of years ago and made this film that was probably the most enriching experiences in all of our lives, film-wise. But we all got to work together, and we were pretty much working for free as much as we could with SAG regulations. But we made that movie, which is now, you know, it's on Netflix. It's called King of Herrings, and we made that movie for $8,000. Went all in after, you know, post and all that stuff. It ended up costing about $25,000, but nonetheless, you know, less than a compact car. You know, we made a movie that we were all proud of, and you can see it. It's on Amazon Prime for free, and Netflix if you have Netflix. It's called King of Herrings, written by an LSU guy, Eddie Jemison.
I guess this is more of a suggestion. I don't know about everybody else. I think they would say the same thing. Somebody needs to consult with the industry that when somebody tries to do a Southern or New Orleans or a Cajun accent,
Yes.
if they can't do it, don't try.
Yeah.
If they want to do a Cajun accent and they really have to, we have a guy named Kent Gonson.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Actually, you know, there's an actor who also has been in over 100 films. He's from Houma, and he's in King of Herrings with us. A good friend of mine. He followed me here about a year after I moved here. He moved here. His name's Wayne Perret, and and he does phenomenal Cajun dialect, and oddly, in over 100 films, he's never been cast in a Cajun role. Sorry to say that one of my first movies was a movie of the week. I'm not going to tell you the title, but I was cast as a guy named Baptiste, a Cajun musician, and it was on CBS, and that was pretty bad. I was one of those offenders. But yeah, I feel you. I'm from West Virginia, and I just had to sit through Logan Lucky, a Soderbergh movie, and a great one, but it's like the dialects were awful. You know, to us, our ear, we're all, everybody always goes back to the Big Easy. Remember Dennis Quaid, you know, they're like, oh, God, that accent.
One last question.
Okay, I just have to
Oh,
know,
yeah. Last question.
I'm sure that your children are all into Stranger Things.
Mm-hmm.
So have they had the chance to meet and hang out with Eleven and the rest of the cast?
Yeah, you know, the great part was that they did before, you know, they were all unknowns. And so, you know, they got to meet them all, you know, long before that. And then, you know, a really cool thing was that the first time my son came on set, you know, it's interesting. They think of these people like an actor like Matthew Modine, you know. Yeah. Well, anyway, he was on there and had a football, and he and Modine just played football for a long time, and it just you know, he had no idea who he was, but then we had just seen Matthew Modine, the young heartthrob Matthew Modine, in a movie what was like a couple months before that football session. And so I was like, you know who you were passing football with, right? And it's like, I told him, you know, the actor, and he's like, no, that's not him, you know, because it's like he's got white hair and everything. He just expected you to stay looking the way, you know, it's like, yeah, that movie was made in 1983.
Support provided by Walters, Papillon, Thomas Cullens, LLC, specializing in business litigation and personal injury cases for over 40 years.